From the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
This is Emilye Crosby on December 3rd, 2015, with Mr. Nate Jones, Nathaniel Hawthorne Jones, in his home in Claiborne County, on his land where he was born. And we're here with the Civil Rights History Project, which is co-sponsored by the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. And John Bishop and Guha Shankar are also here with us this morning. Mr. Jones, thank you so much for doing the interview with us. Can you start by telling us when and where you were born?
I was born April 17, 1914, right here in this community, right here where we are now, just a quarter mile east of where we are now.
At that time, you didn't know, your family didn't own the land then, did they?
No, they moved in here from Lawman, Mississippi, and I was the first child born back here. All the rest of them, see, it was 3 of us out of the 10 were born back here. You know, I was the first one born back here in 1914, and Papa came in from. Well, he left from Lawman and came on in here.
And for people who aren't doing the math real quick, how old are you today?
I'm 101, and on April the 17th next year I'll be 102.
So can you tell us about your family and growing up right here in this community?
Yeah, my family grew up right here in this area. We was, a farmer, and Papa came in here as a sharecropper. That was our occupation. And my mama, she passed on when 5 years after I was born. And my stepmother stayed here in this house. This house still, was built in 1800. But anyway, this was my stepmother stayed. And my mother passed. Papa had all those children she left, and the stepmother had 5 children, and somehow he married my stepmother because she lived here in this house. The house that we lived in, it eventually burned down. But that's the way it was. As my mama died, I was 5 years old. He married, and
so that meant 15 children altogether?
that made 15. Yeah, she had 5, and my mother left 10. And I don't know how they could raise that many children, but but I wonder someday. But I know we all had something, a job to do.
What was your chores?
To get the cat, go and put up the calves every day. They had a place to put the calves. Cows go in the pasture. I will always take care of calves. While I was old enough to do it.
What was your school like?
Well, we had 2 schools. First one was H. Nuts, and next one was Beeston. We only, You know, we only was able to get 6 months schooling. That's all we had, 6 months. Until we, from the time we started school, I was 6 years old. That's when I started school, and until I got, until I got about 9 years old, I didn't ever get, the 6 month schooling. You had to go to the field at that time. It was sharecroppers, and we had to, go to the field, and we had to keep, the landlord, after what they required you for that 1/4, share. Mm-hmm. You had to be in the field. You had to keep the crop, and after I got 9 years old, if I got 6 months school, I never did get 6 months school after I got 9, but started school at 6. When I started the school at 6, I got 6 months school until I got about 9 years old, big enough to go to the field. After that, every day if it rained or anything like that, we could go to school. But that's the way it was.
So would you hope for the rainy days? Did you hope for the rainy days?
Yeah, it's quite natural. And we hope for rainy days. What's so bad about it, sometimes it rained, more than one day. And we be caught over the creek, at Cross Creek, go to school. And we get caught over the creek, and when it rained, the creek got up, we had to walk all the way around 5 miles to get back home. But, it didn't seem hard in those days. It was a joy just to get to go to school, to get out of that field and go to school today. But anyway, after you got a certain age, you never did get that 6 month schooling. But we had good instructor, good teacher, we call them in those days. And my little sister, Emma, she got the full 6 months, except, the rain or anything. She would bring our assignment back from school every day. And when it rained, I would go to school, we would write our assignment and send it back. When it rained and we would go to school, it sometimes be 8 or 10 of us in one class. And those children were fortunate enough to go to school. You see, they were at the top of the class. And most times I would start at the foot of the class, be 8 or 10 in our class. And for that day, I would be at the head. Because I'd been, the teacher would send my assignment back by my sister, little baby sister. And I was studying my assignment.
What did you have to do to move from the back of the class to the front? From the end? How did you
it had two subjects. It was arithmetic and spelling. Now, on arithmetic, you had to go to the board, and then let each child go to the board. The teacher put up an assignment. If you couldn't work that problem, that he would wipe it out and then put it up there for me. But I would be the last one, and I'd go there and work that problem. Yeah, I go. Sometimes the mother division. Sometimes I could have a long. They put a problem down, and I come real down there with that problem until I work. Well, sometimes I cut on around 8 to 10 was in our class.
Yeah.
And I'll be at top on top list for a leader. But soon as fire up, I had to go back to the field. So we were sharecroppers.
If you had owned your own land, would you have been able to go to school further?
Yeah, if we had, I think 2 families there. The teacher had his own land. He had 2 children, and one of them was in my class. And it was 2 families that had their own. Those children went to school every day. They got that 6-month schooling. But those sharecroppers, we just didn't get it.
I think you told me once that because you didn't go the full time, that you had to repeat a grade.
Yeah, sometimes I had to repeat, but most times he would send my assignment by my baby sister, and that's why I could, keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, didn't study like that. I always wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to college, but it just wasn't probably. It was more than 15 of us. I mean, well, it's just impossible. We had to stay on the land. You had to produce something. We had had cotton and corn and peas. They had 3 things that we had to raise and they would get 1/4 of everything, 1/4 of cotton, 1/4 of corn, 1/4 of the peas. We were after my daddy moved from here. My daddy married my stepmother here after my mom passed. And they stayed, we had a big house around on the same land, the Converter land. And when he married her, he moved out of here. And all these 4 rooms, when we was farming, we would fill them up with peas. When we lay by our corn, we would plant peas. The peas run up on the corn, and when in the fall of the year we had picked up peas, that's when I said the 1/4 of peas. Sometimes 75, 80, or 100 bushels of peas. We had to pick that much peas, and I could grab 100 and some pound of peas off of them corn seeds. You plant peas in the corn, when you lay by the corn, you plant peas and peas grew up on the corn, and just hang everywhere. And that's why they charge so much. You had to pay 1/4 of the peas. If you made 200 or 300 bushels, you didn't get but 1/4 of it. And, well, I mean, the landowner got 1/4.
And you would keep.
Landowner got 1/4 of everything, corn, cotton, everything you worked. That's why we was known as shareholders.
I was going to say, some people it was
Sharecropper.
half and half, and if you were given 1/4, that meant.
Yeah, we had our own horses and mules, and if the landowner, had to furnish the horses and everything, all the equipment, therefore you had to work on the head. When we worked on the force, we had our own team.
We're pretty close to Alcorn here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go to campus when you were a young man?
I went to, I didn't go, I went over to campus regular, because I had Annie State over there. But anyway, we went to commencement. Every commencement we would go, that's always, had in mind, I wish I was able to go to Alcorn College. But we would go over there every time they would have some, they had them, first was with baseball. We used to go to see them play baseball. And, they were just like real professional. Alcorn had the best team in the South at that time. Because they had, so we used to go there when we were kids and go to every commencement. Always wanted to go to Alcorn College school. But when I finished 8th grade, I had to go to the wood, I had to go logging. So I wasn't fortunate enough to go to college at that time.
You told me one time that when you were out on campus for one of the commencements, you met somebody selling the Pittsburgh Courier?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't kind of remember, but I always, taking that paper after then, Pittsburgh Courier, I kept it for years after that. And my wife used to send it to me when I was in service every year.
Well, do you remember why you wanted to have the Courier, why you wanted the paper?
Yeah, I want to keep up with it. I always wanted, a baseball player. Well, Alcorn had one of the best baseball team at that time. Bill Foster, I imagine you heard talking, him a left-hand pitcher. He went on up from Alcorn to Chicago Gray. You see, he was the first one I know from Alcorn went up in the big league. And I used to watch him play all the time. And that's, I always wanted to be a baseball pitcher like Bill Foster.
You were a pretty good player yourself.
Yeah, well, I turned out to be a good, pretty won a lot of games. And here, and also when I was in service after the war, and overseas, I played a lot over there in Missouri. I beat a lot of teams over there.
I didn't know you played in the service.
Yeah, I played over there after the war ended.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So can you tell me how you found out about the NAACP?
Yeah, I found out that I was telling you about, I went to school over there at Egypt. That was the first school I went to. And that same school we had a church in the same, we had a school in the church house. That was a church, Egypt, we called it. And they had, the preacher there was Reverend Martin, we call him Reverend Martin. His wife was a teacher, and he was a minister. And I used to go over there to Sunday school and to church on, I believe that was on the second Sunday. And somehow, after I got grown, I kind of left that school and come over to Beeston School here. And I was just trying to think what age I was at that time. Reverend Martin was a preacher. He was a minister of Egypt Church at that time. and he worked on the underground, you know, on civil rights. He won with getting people. You know, he couldn't be out on when I got a certain age, 18. I wasn't going to school over there then, but I was going to church. I would go to church over there, meet him, and he was the first one, kind of introduced me into the civil rights. But anyway, it couldn't be known. We always, before I become a member, I had to meet on a Saturday afternoon, and that was in Poughkeepsie. And it would make sure that, you know, it wasn't but a few of us met.
Was this after the war?
What's that?
Was this after World War II?
Before World War,
This was
before the war. This before I went to, were old enough to go.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I was trying to think that age. I got a record of the age I was when I come involved with civil rights. I used to take that paper known as Grits, I believe, at that time. And they had a lot of in there about the civil rights. And that's when I got in touch with a friend of mine. He was somehow connected, his family was connected with Reverend Martin. And I asked him how could I get to be a member. And that's how he told me to get in touch with Reverend Martin. Reverend Martin, we called it underground, but anyway, we couldn't let it be known. If we meet, we had to meet, you know, one place there in Poughkeepsie at the church, at the Methodist church, right across from M&M. See that old church, right? Mm-hmm. That's where we met. Mm-hmm. And you had to be on a Saturday afternoon. And at that time, you know, everybody was going to town in the wagon and everything. The Poughkeepsie Street up there would be that full, and I was, the friend of mine, he was, Mr. Charlie Cook, we call him. He the one, and he was related to Reverend Martin. And that's what he the one told me he'd take me down and I could join. And I was trying to think what year that was.
I think it might have been 1952. I got the charter, the list of the charter members. It was from 52.
But anyway, that's where we used to meet down there. And finally, you know, finally it's got out, you know, I don't know how it was, but it got out that we were meeting there and we had to, and that's the last time I had to, you know, be meeting like that. But I went on John then, but you know, I had to keep my card hidden. And if you didn't, you know, if you were caught with a card like that, you know, what would happen, and we didn't know what would happen to us. But some of our friends, you know, lost the card, and that time, it was the Ku Klux Klan was around at that time, too. You couldn't let it be known that you was a member.
Were you afraid to join? Did you have any fear about it?
No, I never did have any fear. I don't know. I don't ring my head sense does that. Had any fear. I just wanted to be. Yeah, I wanted to be. I heard talk about, you know, freedom. I heard talk about freedom. And if you got enough freedom, if you could cross the Mason-Dixon line, I had all of that, at that time. And I always liked to study a lot when I was young. I wasn't able to go to school, but I could read, and I would subscribe for Grits, and the paper, would talk about the NAACP.
How did you get into the service, the military? Were you drafted?
I was drafted into to the Navy from Camp Chevy.
Down in
I went to Camp Chevy, be enlisted, but I was really drafted. Somehow I was there in Jackson, drafted, and they sent me. I was drafted into the service. That was 1944, I believe it was.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, that was it was the wonderful experience, and it was, when I got in, in the boot camp, it was fear, because we were there in Birmingham, Maryland, not too far. Or sometime when the siren would go off, that's the only time that's the only time I would get scared. But anyway, I think it was 5 weeks you finished that course. I finished my course, and then the shipping I was done to San Diego. And that was, I stayed there a good while, a long time. And the shipment I was there to Hawaii. And from stayed in Hawaii about 3 weeks, and they shipped me on out to Madeira. So it was a long time. We went by ship, aircraft carrier, and that's where they carry us. But in Hawaii, that's where we got separated. I think it was 100 some of us left Brainbury together, and left from San Diego together, and we went on the first ship was Macon Island. That was the first ship we went on. It was aircraft carrier, and full airplane on top. And when we left, I was staying in Hawaii 3 weeks, and when we left Hawaii, we left on the aircraft carrier, carried airplane on out to near where they had the war. The war was going on in Saipan when we got to Madeira. I think it was right at 400 or 500 miles different. But of course, the air base was there on Madeira. They were flying from there, bombing in Saipan. They were coming back. And remember one soldier came back killed. I remember that well as anything to the air base. Because before I started, they put me into my assignment was cooking and steward. I was a steward mate before I started cooking. I had to get a certificate, from Washington D.C. For me to be able to be a cook. I got my certificate. But anyway, that was our base. And that's the only time we had air raid, we had ship raid. They were saying, the ATO, they were saying, well, Many times we had to run out in the lagoon. We couldn't get in Foxhole, cause but we had to go out in the lagoon and up to the water in my neck.
Oh, did you?
Up to my neck, yeah. We go that far, cause they said them ship torpedoes. One of them ships come over there and sank this little island, and we had those air raids and ship raid too. The thing go off. I had to go in the ocean 3 times. I know I remember 3 times I had the whole group had to go in the lagoon.
Wow.
That's and still digging for Foxhole. You just go out in the water until you get up to your waist.
Did you tell me once that you were part of a protest when you were in the Navy? That you had a protest while you were in the Navy?
I was in Hawaii I was in the Navy. We had a hunger strike.
What was the hunger strike about?
They didn't want to feed us with the officer. See, we was officer cook, and we supposed to eat with the officer. We didn't supposed to eat in general mess. Yeah.
And you say we, who's this?
That group, the steward mates and steward.
And so those are all African Americans?
Yeah.
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 Did the hunger strike work?
Yeah, it worked. It's worked. It's for 3 days. You just hunger strike for 3 days, and it worked.
So you were able to eat in the
Yeah, and regular after that they shipped it out, but I think it was 100 some of us left San Diego on that ship, and that's when they started sending them different places. But I was with the group. 29 of us out of the 100 some. 29 of us went on down to Majura and the Marshall. It was a long way. It had taken us, I think, 4 or 5 days to get there, because international date line, it taken us so long to get to the international date line. That's where we stayed all night. And we left there. It takes so many days to get on out there in Majura and Marshall Island, right near Australia.
Did you think at all about voting while you were in the service?
Well, I voted while I was in the service, but and they sent it back, and they probably threw it in the
Is that
trash
an
bag.
absentee ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the poll tax?
Well, I had to pay poll tax before I left. Before I left, went in the service. When I got 21 years old, I had to pay poll tax. No. That was before I went in service, I had to pay poll tax. But after I got out, then I had to pay major change. Then when I got out, I wanted to try to get the vote, be eligible to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Just had a hard time in getting that done.
What would happen when you were trying to register to vote? Was anybody doing that with you, or were you doing it by yourself?
It was 3 of us. Trying, went in there and tried. They would give us I'm trying to think what is some part of the Constitution, They had that little book, I forget what you call it.
You told me that they gave you a copy of the part of the Mississippi Constitution on
Yeah,
eminent domain?
that's the Mississippi Constitution. See, I ain't as sharp as I was to read it back, but anyway, they give you a copy of that, and either she give you that, and she's telling you, you have to write down a copy of, and He write down the copy of it, everything. And yeah, sit up there. I was trying to think, I'm old now, I can't remember. That Constitution looked like it was, Well, I can remember way back what it was, but anyway, I wrote it down, got everything straight, and I was the last one to leave out. Mr. Elliot Collins and
Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Griffin, Mr. Elliot Collins. Elliot, he had a learning. Griffin and I didn't have a learning. I just had 8th grade learning, and Griffin the 6th grade, I believe it was. But anyway, Mr. Collins, he went on, got through before anybody and put him down. And I was the last one in there, and I would come by me easy and put mine down. I didn't know what she had done to the Collins young, but she looked over mine and everything. She said, well, you didn't make it this time. Maybe you do it next time. She just wrote board on there. Said, you come back and do it again. I went back the second time, and still didn't pass. Then passed that, they started giving that literature test and everything. Then that's the time I passed it.
What made the three of you decide to try to register when nobody else was doing it?
Well, I had got kind of learned a lot about that, and then the officer over there in the service was my officer. He kind of, I don't know where he's from, some part of the north, but anyway, he wanted, he always encouraged us to, we should vote. I voted for him over there and sent it back, but they said he didn't do nothing but board it. But anyway, he had a good officer. He said I ought to vote, and I went on to mate with me. He from Poughkeepsie. He said, then I do nothing but throw it in the trash bag. I said, well, I'm going to go and do vote. And my officer, he encouraged us to go ahead and vote. So that would happen. But I had to do it all over when I got out of the service.
Were you afraid when you were trying to register? Were you afraid anything would happen to you or your family?
No, I wasn't afraid anything was going to happen. I don't know why. I was never afraid. I always wanted, to vote, because I used to get them papers, as I said, the paper of Courage and the other paper, read it all, where other people was voting and what happened up there in the north. But anyway, I always wanted to vote.
You told me one time that when Reverend Smith was running for Congress, that you had somebody to come and do a class on the Constitution and voter registration. Do you remember that?
It's Reverend.
When Reverend Smith, RLT Smith, when he was running for Congress, you said that there was a young man that came through and did some voter registration classes. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember that well as anything. Because, they used to, I don't know, the police and everything be downstairs. It was a building there in Poughkeepsie. We would be upstairs taking them tests and everything. And when we come down, the police would be down. And what broke that meeting up, the most of them got scared, I wasn't so scared because, I say it all the time, it must have been where I was able to go to service, stayed in service. you know, the 2 years and a half that I stayed in service. I wasn't scared, but anyway, when that class came, when we came from upstairs downstairs, all them police and was out there waiting on us. Yeah, they wouldn't do anything to it, but they, you know, the other boys that were meeting, you know, that's kind of made them scared, and that broke that meeting up, you know. But we had several meetings we tried to have, you know, civil rights, with the civil rights struggle. You know, first I would tell you we were trying to get ready to vote, and then that was part of it too, you know, to get our rights and everything. But anyway.
Do you remember that young man's name that came?
Let me see what that boy's name. My memory ain't good as it used to be, but he was from New York.
Are we on?
It's going again.
He told me it was Bob Moses.
Yeah, Moses.
Yeah.
Moses.
And I remember you said that first meeting you came downstairs and they started calling out the names, and then the next meeting there was only 3 of you that came.
Yeah, there's only 3: Elliot, Collins, and Griffin, and I.
Can you, you know what? Tell us about how you met Miss Jones and you all getting married.
Well, first I met her. I lived around over here. We were kids at that time. Well, she was young, much younger than me, because she at least 5 years younger than me. And my brother stayed in a house right down below here, and he had married, and he had his wife. He had their first child, and my wife, she stayed right across the street from here. That house was right just a little distance down this way, and the creek is on across there. That was my wife was, you know, staying over there with her uncle. Come over to visit uncle. She would come over to visit uncle, and my brothers were married then, and they had their first child. And my wife's sister would nurse that child while the other would go in the field, but my wife was too young, you know, to do that kind, because she's 5 years younger than me. My wife was 5 years younger. We stayed right around here, the others, and they used to walk from right over there, over there to our house, you know, to get something like milk or something like that for the baby. And she was just a little girl. And but you know, I had never seen her before, but her sister was nursing my little nephew, but she would come over with her sister. And they had come around to our house, you know, to get milk or supply for the baby. And it was the way I could try to cut them off. I always tried to get, she was a good-looking little girl. I wanted to try to get close enough to, you know, to see her and get acquainted with her or anything. But they could look through the woods and see me trying to cut them off, and they'd run. And I know that when I first got to know her, she was babysitting for my brother, and she was just a kid. I mean, she must have been around 9 years old, because I was nearly 5 years older than her when I married. No, and then she was 18 and I was 22 when married. That's the way it was. But anyway, that distance, but that's, I got acquainted with her early.
Yeah.
Way before she
Yeah.
used to run, try to cut her off. The
Yeah.
coat and couldn't cut her off because I was running. But that was right in here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How long were you married before she passed away?
72 years.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And how did you and Miss Jones, you said when you first were on this land, it was sharecropping. How did you come to buy this land?
Well, when I was in the service, I sent, she had allowance of $55 that with the government paying her. And after I got my rate, I was getting $109 a month. And I sent all of that back. I was getting, I was sending my check back every month. And she kept that money. We had planned, when I got in service, write her every day. I wrote her every day. She would write me back every day. Sometime, the mail get delayed. Sometimes I would get 13 letters. It'd be delayed. But anyway, we made that suggestion that we were going to save all we could get and buy land. That's what that started when we were young, when I was in the service. And she saved my payday. I would send her the $100. So I was getting $109 after I got my rate.
Yeah.
And I sent that $100 back every month.
Yeah.
And she put it in the bank. And she used her, and she just used her money. And she was getting that $65 a month. But we wrote one another every day, and we had our plan. That's what we were going to do with that money that I saved from the Navy.
So when you came back, you all were able to buy it?
Oh yeah,
and then farm your own land?
I never will forget. There's $1,600. It was in the bank. I never forget.
Yeah.
But we bought the land, 126 acres from the Conn brothers. And the 126 acres was, I believe, somewhere like $1,400, something like that. That's what he charged. It looked like to me I was paid $60. I don't know, it was either $40 or $60 an acre. But anyway, that's the way we come by the 126 acres we bought when I got out of the service.
When you were registering to vote, did it make a difference that you owned your own land?
I don't think land had anything to do with it, because there were 2 or 3 people around here. Mom, Professor White, and he had owned his land. Professor Whitten, and he owned his own. There's quite a few black owned their own land, and somehow they would let them to vote. I remember Professor White and Professor Whitten and Reverend Martin, and I could name around 18 people they let vote.
Mm-hmm.
But they all were, kind of high up, we call them, and they had land.
Mm-hmm.
Or they owned something. Well, now you remember, I'm not as sharp as I have been, 101 years old.
You sound pretty sharp to us.
Well, he could run circles around us all. You said that. So when did the movement get to? How did it get to picking up around this area?
No, it's got picking up by, Mr. Charles Elver. When Mr. Charles Elver come in here, we were scared to do anything. Charles Elver and Rudy Shield, when they came in here, they did everything they could. There was a biracial attempt, and the group did everything they could to keep it from coming. If it was unnatural, we heard it. The first thing the news got it was unnatural. Coming on up, they came on up to Fed, and the white decided they have a biracial committee, and they picked the group that they want to meet with, that biracial group. That was preachers and teachers, which they were scared of their jobs. But anyway, that they picked who they wanted to meet with. Tried to prevent myself and them from, they were marching on this way, coming to Fed. And finally, they did come on to Pocahontas. When they came to Pocahontas, that's when everything changed.
You said that the whites got the biracial committee to try to stop the movement from coming.
From coming.
How come they weren't successful?
Well, we kind of like rebelled against that group, of course. We wanted, we wanted to be free, and we wanted to be able to march and protest about freedom. We wanted our right and everything. And so we decided they came on anyway. Rudy Shield and I forget the other fellow's name, but anyway, Charles Elver,
Steve Marsaw.
Oh, yeah. For me, from Natchez, that's right. But anyway, that's when we got started.
Can you tell us what Rudy Shields was like?
Yeah, Rudy Shields was brave. We thought he was the bravest fellow we ever seen. Yeah, and Rudy Shields would go around and encourage us to be, encourage them to go out and try to get people registered to vote. That's what he was brave about that. There's a lot of plantations you couldn't go on, and that was most of the voters were, on plantation. And Rudy Shields, and I'm trying to think the boy, he just passed on, worked with Rudy Shields. So
George Henry Walker?
George Henry Walker. And the girl from Gusta.
We're going to see her later today.
Yeah, I can go see. Yeah, but anyway, those are the ones that work right with Rudy Shields to get people registered to vote. Of course, I worked on that group too. Of course, most of them perhaps scared to go on Alcorn campus, and I was the one that went down and transferred so many children to be voted, registered to vote in Pocahontas. But anyway, I worked with that group too. And
What was Miss Gusta like?
Miss Gusta,
Yeah.
oh, she just worked with Rudy. Worked with Rudy Shields. Though she did most work with Rudy Shields, her and George Henry.
Yeah.
Those two.
Yeah. What, when the movement started, I know that the NAACP needed some officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you agreed to do that. How did your neighbors respond, your people living out here, when you decided to do that?
Well, they kind of like went along with me, because if they hadn't went along with me, I couldn't, been successful at all. They most had confidence in me. I don't know why, but they did. And I don't know reason why. The white was on my side some kind of way. I don't know if it was just by nature, who or what, but they did a lot, helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
Especially, those that was hard. Secrets, and he was school superintendent.
Yeah. Was his name Robert Seegers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was a friend of mine.
Did he hunt with you?
Yeah, he came right here and sat right in this house here and ate, sit right at that table and ate. He'd go out there, kill them 8 or 10 squirrels.
Yeah.
And he hired, sitting right in there, he hired my wife to work in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
And he hired me right there in that room right there. He hired me to drive the school bus.
Yeah.
Well, see, he was president school superintendent. But anyway, he loved to hunt, and he could hunt on my place. There was a lot of squirrels on this place. Wasn't none up there on his place. But anyway, he'd come down here, he'd kill 8 or 10 squirrels. He'd sit down there and drink coffee and eat right there at that table. And he hired me right in there. He hired my wife right in that room right there.
So
That it don't look like it, but I said, that's where I got my first job driving school bus, right?
So you were farming and driving the school bus at the same time?
Yeah. At the same time, I get up. And that was, a friend, and me, I count him as a real friend.
Mr. Seegers?
I would get up and make my run, and I could bring the bus back here. And I didn't bring it in here because it was too long to get in here. At that time, the road wasn't fixed like it is now. I left at that house up there, up there at Brown, and I would get in the truck going back to the farm. Mm-hmm. And they put 3 or 4 hours on the farm then, and you had to get in the truck and go back. And so he hired my wife too. My wife started teaching school. And
did she teach at the Russell
School? Richard, yeah, she taught that place.
And then she switched over to
Port Gibson.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, all of the whites weren't, not all the whites reacted the same way, right? Did you have any trouble?
No, I didn't have any trouble, and somehow I had worked with white pretty much ever since I got grown, in them sawmills and different things. And I was well known by being a timber cutter, Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted to hire me, me and my brother was worked together. And that's the reason, I guess that's the reason I was successful. Another cause, I didn't work with no outside with all the brothers I had. If, you know, it was two. One was the same age as my stepbrother. And we worked together. We logged together, logged on the loggers together. So.
Was that Mr. Duffin?
Yeah.
Eddie Duffin?
You remember Eddie, don't you? Yeah, me and him were the same age. But Kelly was a little older. Most I worked with the older one than I did the one my age. But anyway, that's how it was. Everybody wanted to hire us, you know. We didn't have to even think about wanting a job hunt us. Yeah.
Good workers.
Yeah.
What did Mr. Ellis say to you once you joined when the movement got started? Remember Mr. Eli Ellis?
Oh yeah. He told me, he said, well, Nate, what are you, I heard that you joined that thing. That's what he called it. He said, now we've been good to you, and we let you have anything that you want and money here at the bank. I said, yeah, Mr. Ellis, I've been good to you all. I paid my bill. He paused it a long time. He bust out laughing and said, you're right. But anyway, that was, but see, the thing about it, he was the vice president, but he had been right down here hunting with me. That's when he was saying he had been so good to me. I told him I had been good to him because he'd come down and hunt on my place and hunt everywhere. I'd be with him hunting. And he killed all the squirrels. He paused it a long time. He bust out laughing and said, you're right. But anyway, I had a lot of friends, a lot of white friends. The St. John was the same way by me. He was my boy, man, but they didn't think nobody could cut as many logs as Nate and his brother.
Who was that? Who was that you're talking about?
Them St. John. You remember in the St. John? The last one worked down. Yeah, the lawman at the light place. Okay. Robert St. John.
Oh yeah, I think I do know.
You all remember, Robert?
I've heard the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Reverend Spencer? Was he the head of the Human Relations Committee? Was he on the biracial committee?
Yeah, Reverend Spencer. He was on the biracial. He was with the group, the scared group, and he didn't think it was time. He said it just wasn't time for us, to make all the protests that we were making. And we always told him this is just on this. We had waited too long. Time don't wait on us. They said now is the time. Right now is the time. That's what we were telling him. But finally, he came before he, got disabled. He changed. He made a change.
Mm-hmm. What did he say to you when you were? Well, you told me once that some of the people, some of the farmers you knew, didn't think you ought to go public with the NAACP, and tried to talk you out of that.
Yeah, they tried. Many of them tried to talk me out of it, but I just didn't ever change because most of them had never been inducted in the service. They had never been, with other people that been free all their life, you know. But anyway, I observed everything I could. I had wonderful officers in the Navy, you know. Thought a lot of me because you know, I would always follow the rules. But anyway, I didn't think that, you know, I always wanted to, you know, be free like the other person was, and I just never did get in the way. They couldn't sometimes try to talk me out of it. Would say, well, we had protests and everything. You remember all them protests we had, and tear gas, and would throw it on us at all costs. We just had a rough time in those days trying to get our freedom.
What was the protest out at Alcorn? What was that about?
But that's most about the student, you know. This is most about the student having the chance. Had so many grieving. I can't remember those grieving we carried in. We carried in so many grieving that what was going on at Alcorn, you know, faculty, not the faculty, the student right and everything. They didn't have, and the workers that worked on the campus, you know, kept up all the workers, wasn't getting paid what they should been paid. I just remember seeing them kind of over, but I know it was five brigadiers and you carried in. You know, they wouldn't. And I know it was I can't name it now, but I know that they wasn't paying the labor what they were supposed to get. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it was five. I used to know them all, but right now I'm kind of rusty. But that's what it was all about.
What was the tear gas like? What was it like to have that happen?
Well, it was really rough. I mean, they tear gassed in the stove. Some of them was in the stove. They tear gassed that stove. And the man, before the tear gas, you see, the student had done got over that patent stove, and the patrolman and everything, the student had to come around. I was with that group, and I knew when I was going off on GIB or right, you know, I used to ride over there and hook my horses. And I know how to go around and go around the pet and get to pet and stove. And Rudy Shield and one more other person than me. But I want led that group, you know, was protesting around the back of the patent store around the vet village, and brought them in. And patrolmen, they got, you know, mad about that. All the students who got in there, then that's when they started throwing the tear gas. And I had to lead those students back out.
What happened with the students if they were protesting, if somebody knew they were in the movement, what would happen to the students?
I don't know if they had been able to capture them. I don't know what would happen, but it was happened. I had taken my trade at Alcorn. I used to hook my horse. I used to ride from here over to Alcorn every morning and go and take my GIB training. But anyway, I knew how to. I knew how to hook my horse, and I knew how to go around and then get back to the place where the students stay. And I led them, George Henry Walker, and I led those students back around with that filling station and come back around and see when the students got back to the dormitory, they started shouting and hollering and singing again. And that made the patrolman mad then. And that's when I was back on by Patton Stove, back with the movement. And that's when they started throwing the tear gas. They got mad, and then when they didn't know how the students got back, but we had killed them back, and I knew how to get back. And then they started tear gassing. Throw tear gas in the store and everywhere. And more people got string on, and they beat up. I know they beat up two of my friends and one preacher. He was just sitting on some side of a car. Passed by and hit him, beat him up, and beat up another that killed a couple to the hospital. But anyway, they tried to get Eva. That's the one. But Reverend Dawes and I caught Eva. And they tear gassed me, but see, I had been used to tear gas when I was in service, when I first take my training in service, and never bring me. But anyway, they put that with towel over my nose. But anyway, they didn't hit Evers, but they beat all the rest of them, and one of them said, "Don't hit him." And I was on one side of him, and the Reverend Dawson was on the other side of him. We let Evers out of there.
Why do you think they didn't want to hit him?
I don't know. I often wonder, but sometimes they don't hit a leader. Sometimes they don't hit a leader. You don't know what would happen. I don't know what reason why, but I heard him say that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had one side of him, and Reverend Dawes had the other side of Evers. But anyway, we got Evers out of the way, and I went back and tried to help get those stranded women who was, tear gas had done. A lot of them were down. Get them up. But anyway, they beat up two people and take them to the hospital.
One of them was Mr. Warner's father, right? Julius Warner,
yeah,
his
father? Warner. That was Julius Warner's uncle.
His uncle?
Uh-huh. Then Reverend from Hattiesburg, I forget his name now, but that was a preacher.
Okay.
He beat him up.
He was from Hattiesburg?
Yeah, he was from Hattiesburg.
You ready? We're back. When they had the marches out at Alcorn, you remember what year that was?
Let me see. I was driving school. Well, that was 1936, wasn't it?
1966.
66.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. You got arrested on one of those Alcorn marches, didn't you? Did you get arrested?
Yeah, I got arrested. I got arrested on the first march. They had another one, but the first march was on the south side. You're going toward Lawman, mm-hmm. Coming in. Mm-hmm. No, that was the first one. And the second time, that went tear gas. When I tell you, tear gas, they came in from the west. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they arrested all of us and put us in jail. And
were you worried about that?
No, I was driving the school bus at that time. That's the time my wife had, to drive the school bus. And she had never been driving, but she had been driving a car all the time. But she had never driven that big old bus. But anyway, she had to pick up children for me because I was in jail. And but anyway, that's the time they arrested us there. But the time I was telling you about the tear gas, that was the second time. That was the first time when they put us in jail, put all of us in jail. And
Did you stay in jail long?
just overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had to have something to bail you out,
What were the mass meetings like?
The mass meeting was good. There was a lot of singing and clapping and going on, and until elders get up and tell what we had to do, what the next meeting would be, and finally, before we break up, they take a march around the town. We take a stroll, the whole group go around and march on the town. Town people didn't. One time attacked us. Just one time they attacked some of it, but most didn't. Then police didn't bother us too much. If we stayed in line, anybody get out of line. They attempted one time, but sometimes they stopped it. They have said we had a right to protest, and some white was, against the police, stopping us. One time we had disturbing like that with the police, but they soon stopped. They let us go and make that march, and the white merchant would most call it, "You gonna tip tonight?" That was say, "Y'all gonna tip tonight?" But anyway, we didn't have one incident, and that's when I told you the police kind of broke that up to some of the police that started, and trying to stop the march or something. And the chief, told them, let them march, let them go and make their protest, as long as they didn't throw any rocks or do anything to the merchant, to the stores or anything. Had some peaceful marches there, but didn't tap nothing, didn't break store windows or nothing. Other places where we heard, when they had some protests, they would break in stores, break in stores and things. We didn't have that in Port Gibson.
Yeah. What was the boycott about? The Port Gibson boycott?
It was about wages. You wasn't paying the workers fair. I was trying to think. I was trying to think of all them dreams we had, but my memory ain't sharp as it was back there. But I know the pay. I remember that because we wasn't getting paid the minimum wage where we should be getting paid. And the working condition hours, it was a lot of unright that we wasn't having at that time. We it just the hours and everything, the working hours and everything, and most of it was the pay.
Was it hard to organize the boycott?
What's that?
Was it hard to organize the boycott?
Yeah, well, it was pretty hard because a lot of people was afraid the giant, a lot of parents didn't let their children participate because a lot of them didn't understand. A lot of them were just afraid to get involved. So that's the way it was. Those that was dedicated and knew what it was all about, it was all right. But the parents most control the children. Most of us stayed on plantation like that, and they had control over you. Majority of the people stayed on plantation at that time, and they were. If they got started, the word got out, they were participating. Quite naturally, the parents want to stop the children because they were at to move off the place and everything like that. But that was the most feared part.
Did your son participate in the school desegregation?
He was young.
Yeah.
We had to control him. He wanted to be, that little group wanted to be just like Rudy Shield. They wanted to throw rocks at people's cars and things like that. And we just wouldn't let him do that.
Your son?
We wouldn't let him do that. We told him we explained all that to him. We had a rough time getting them away from the other group.
Yeah.
But anyway, they broke that group up with that was a little group.
They called them the Black Hats?
Yeah. Run around throwing rocks or bricks in people's cars and things like that, had people afraid with that Black Hat group.
Why would they, when they would throw rocks or something, why would they do that? What was their motivation?
I don't know. They were saying, a lot of people didn't participate with the civil rights. Family, I'm talking about, that had children. It wasn't about the children, it was more about the parents wasn't letting the children participate. And that's what that was all about. But because, that's what all of that started about. And quite naturally, the law had to break up that because that wasn't right. Yeah. I never did go along with that either.
What about was it the same group that was doing self-defense?
Well, they soon broke up that Black Hat group, That was the group that were throwing rocks at cars and things.
Did you ever have to stand guard? Did you ever have to protect your house or anything, or anybody else?
No, I didn't have to never do that. I never did. No.
Reverend Dorsey, he had to have some protection at one time, didn't he?
Yeah. He's the only one.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why Reverend Wall didn't have to have protection, but Reverend Hall, he wouldn't, he wasn't as dedicated as Reverend Dorsey was.
Yeah. When the school started desegregating, when they started having freedom of choice. Did your children go to freedom of choice?
My children, they went right along with y'all.
Okay.
You know, Alonzo was along.
He was a little older than us, wasn't he, Alonzo?
Yeah, Alonzo is 63.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
little older than me.
yeah, he older than you.
Yeah.
But you remember him? He was, yeah, he was old, much older than you. But anyway,
Did he go over to PG?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What was his experience over at the white school?
Oh, yeah, but he, I don't know. He must have been pretty smart. He passed out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
graduated out of there, and I mean he must have been pretty smart. He passed. I mean, I don't think but 3 of them graduated at that time.
Yeah.
In his class.
That's right.
I was trying to think name the other. But he was one.
Yeah.
I know there were 3 of them, and he was one of the 3 group that graduated that year.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
With the voter registration, I know the voter registration started around, got very active after the Voting Rights Act, and by like middle of 1966, it was a black majority. Was it hard to get people to run for office?
It wasn't so. At first, it was a scary time. You know, it was hard to try to call. I know we had to try to go out and try and find somebody who was brave enough to run. And yeah, it was pretty rough to find somebody, you know, wanted to run. And that was in 1967, I believe, when we first couldn't get about 2 or 3. We got Matt Rawls and Emilye Collins and one other with 3.
Miss Collins got elected too.
Yeah, Miss Collins, yeah. But anyway, it was just hard to find somebody to run because I was one going out through the county trying to find somebody who would be able to run. And they asked me, they said, if I lose my job, you gonna give me a job? See, I would want to go out and try and find somebody, a candidate to run. Of course, I was on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a rough time finding somebody to run. We got Matt Ross to run. We got Nathaniel Hawthorne, Ms. Cotton, and my wife. Looked like it was one more other person. I got pictures up back there somewhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were first. And
When your wife got elected, she was elected circuit clerk, right?
yeah,
In 1971.
1971. But see, we had election before then number 3, the first time we had, then number 3 black win. That was Mr. Let's see, Supervisor. Matt Ross was 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then, who was the
Well, let's see.
sheriff?
Dan McKay still.
Dan McKay was on then. Dan
Yeah.
McKay on the. We just had 3 run. I know 3-1. The first time we ran in 67, then but 3 people won.
How did you feel when Miss Jones got elected?
Well, I wouldn't. As I said, you know, Mr. Seatree, the superintendent of education, was my friend, and he hired her right here, right there in the kitchen there. like my wife.
Yeah.
So it was no fear because they had, you know, the superintendent and those in the bank and everything there. Well, I had plenty of helpers, but anyway, I wasn't afraid at all. When she won.
Did it feel good to have
Yeah,
her in the circuit clerk?
yeah, I felt good, but sure, I felt good. She served 2 years, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's pause for a sec.
What was the singing like in the movement? The singing, the song?
Oh yeah. We shall overcome, you know, that was the song. They pet that. And them children could sing that song too, though. And freedom too. They sang that song too. But anyway, we will have that every Tuesday. Tuesday night, every month, that first Tuesday, we're gonna have that movement.
Who was leading the songs?
I'm trying to think about that. I can't call her name now, but
Was it Miss Crowder? Thelma
No.
Crowder? No?
Miss Crowder, she was the first, among the first one, the leading name, but it was a young girl that was trying to think of her name. She was, but Miss Crowder was with that group, the younger group. They had 2 groups was singing, but anyway, she was one. Miss Crowder was one of them.
Did they have a youth choir?
Yeah, but that's the youth crowd. That's the one I was trying to call the name. Doll Baby. We call her Doll.
It wasn't one of the Brandons.
No, she was let me see, what the street out there on Sugar Hill. I was trying to think of the girl name.
I'll try to think about who that could have been. I probably know. I should know.
We call her Doll. I know. We call her Doll.
Yeah.
She used to lead them songs.
All right. Do you remember a white lawyer named Fred Berger?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Red Burger. He the one was my lawyer when I got the place.
Okay.
Yeah, he my lawyer. He the one lawyer when I first bought the place.
Okay.
But yeah.
Can you tell us about Armart?
Yeah, I might. The Armart came out of this movement, and we had to have, by share, had to have shares to get Armart started. I forgot how many shares we had to have a shareholder. And we had, I forgot how many shareholders. I know we were the leading shareholder. We were almost shared than any rest of them. And Mr. Alexander Collins, it took around 5 or 6 of us, to get enough share to get this store started. Somehow we had a good many shares. And that's the way it got started, by getting shareholders. I'm getting how many shares we had to have. We got started in 1969.
I think think it might have been 67.
67 was our first year. You know.
What was the motivation? Why did you all decide to organize the grocery store?
Well, we wanted to have a grocery store of our own. That's the way we got organized. We wanted to have a grocery store of our own. That was the first change we had. And the only way we could get it, by shareholder, because wasn't any of us able to go by and have a store like that. We wanted an incorporated store. That's what we wanted, because Matt Roy and them had a little store down there. But anyway, we wanted an incorporated store, and that's when the competition really started, in the community with the white store. We didn't done well. It was $25 per share. That's what. And we had so many $25 shareholder. We had outstanding shareholder we didn't have, but let me see, about 3 or 4 Reverend. Had the Reverend, I forget his name, but anyway, he was the top shareholder. And I think Alexander Collins was the second shareholder, and we was on third.
Okay.
We were on third. The others had quite a few. I think we had around about 70 some shareholders, but they only had, most of them had $25.
Right.
Most of them were $25 per, and they owned one share. It was $25 per share.
And what was your job with Armark?
My job, was I was on managed group, but I was the one that, the manager of Armark. I was the first manager.
Who was on the board?
We had 7 on the board. I was just Alexander Collins and the preacher from what I was saying was top shareholder. Reverend, he wasn't Lewis. But anyway, the top shareholder was the preacher. And from
It wasn't Reverend Dorsey.
no,
Reverend Doss?
no, he was from Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It wasn't
tried.
Reverend Smith?
Reverend Smith.
Reverend R.L.T.
Yeah,
Smith?
R.L.T. Smith.
He had a shop up in Jackson, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a store up there. I used to
Okay.
go up there all the time to his store. He had 2 stores up there.
Okay.
He had one on 9th Street and one up there on the other street I was trying to say.
So did he help you on how to run a store? Did he help you figure out how to put it together?
Yeah, he helped a lot about that. He really helped a lot how to go about, how to get established. Because we would have a meeting every month. At those times, he would come down there and check on them. But we started paying off share. We paid share, $25 a share, or a shareholder meeting. And share. Every year we would pay off share. Some of us, like Reverend Smith and Alex Collins, and we put our share right back in the store, and our share would, come multiply. But anyway, that's the way you got started with, shareholder meeting, and we did pretty well on it. We turned over $250,000 Yeah. But, you know, we had a lot of overhead to pay, and pay our shareholders. They wanted to pay every year, you know. Yeah. But we tried, my wife and I, and one other person tried to tell them, let the money stay in there, let's go buy store in another community where we have chains of stores.
Yeah.
But now everybody want their money. I don't know. Yeah, they didn't go for that.
Yeah.
See, we wanted to have a store in Port Gibson. We might have had one somewhere else.
Yeah.
Somewhere else that we were trying to get them leave the money in there. Well, quite a few of them tried to get them to do that, but the majority, you know, always win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was Charles Evers like?
Charles Evans, he was kind of a straightforward person. That's one person I love.
Yeah.
I was with him. Was it this year?
Was it?
I believe it was this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here in Port Gibson, yeah. Sit right with him. But anyway, he was kind of straightforward person. And he is. He's still like that.
Yeah.
And he's a person, not only just me personally love him, the whole community love him. They still love him. So he was really a good person. He was a good leader.
Yeah. What was the lawsuit about? Claiborne Hardware versus NAACP?
That was a suit they brought against us about the boycott. You see, they brought that suit in against us because they would claim that we, by them putting them boycotts on, you know, it cut their income or whatsoever. Cut the profit, cut the profit. And that's what they sued us about. And I had to go to court on that many times, but it took a long time for us to win that suit, but we did win the suit. And it was up in 1980, wasn't it?
82.
82.
Yep.
Yeah. Took it to around 1982 before we won the suit.
Your property was tied up for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, my property was tied up.
Did that make it more difficult to farm or anything?
It didn't make it difficult to farm because, you know, as I said, you know, I had some white friends that was Secrets, and they had Haston in the bank. Mm-hmm. That's where I did my work. And had Eli Ellis in the bank. I had so many people on my side. they didn't. I could get anything I want. I mean, they supported me. Yeah. And they just didn't. I could go get anything I want, you know. But anyway, I guess why I would pay my bill. That's I pay my bill.
For them too.
Yeah. And I was, cause you know, I worked hard, and I always was friendly with them, and they some of them come out here and hunt on my place and hunt with me and be with me. Yeah. That friendship means a lot. Yeah.
What do you want people to know about the civil rights movement?
Yeah, I want them to know, you know, how it brought us through, and how it was before civil rights came in, it was something that, you know, that we had hope. As I told you before, that during the 1930s, I believe in the early 1930s, always wanted to, you know, join the NAACP and didn't know how to get in touch with it because we had that early, the later part I said in 1930, I believe was that we got a radio and things like that we could hear what was going on in the world by the civil rights. Then we wanted to join, and that's when, you know, really got interested in it. But anyway, it's we went on joining when we had a chance, but it would take a chance to join. You just couldn't let it be known that you was a card holder of the NAACP, and you couldn't carry it on you because you didn't know whether you were going to be held up with officer or not, because you might read that what happened to a card carrier right in Port Gibson at the time. That boy got killed, I believe it was. They killed that boy by having that card, the NAACP card. And that, you know, had a lot of fear on us by killing. When we ever got a card or anything like that, a lot of them would burn our card up. We would burn them up, but we always would hide our card.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate enough and glad, you know, we could get what was going on, and what's something about our right, you know. We really knew how far to go, and that organization always taught us, you know, something about freedom. We wanted to be free and everything, but we couldn't just be open. We had to be do it underground. Yeah, I got my first card. I got the man coming down the street. Coming down the street, they hear you card, and I had to hide the card. The first card we got, you know, we were scared to carry it on, we were scared to have it at the house. I burned the first card. But the second card, you know, we got it, and we kept it. We wanted to burn that card, but what scared us, you know, what happened in Port Gibson when they caught that boy with that card. You know, and that made us afraid to carry the card on them.
But it didn't stop you from getting it.
No, it didn't stop me. It didn't stop me because it didn't stop me from going to the meeting. And because we knew it was a preacher, Reverend Martin, and he taught us what time we supposed to go in meeting. They had it always would be at a church. The church I told you right across from Eminem. And make sure it be on a Saturday after 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So the street would just be full, and you know,
Everybody notice you?
everybody shopping.
Yeah.
Everybody shopping.
You blend
In those days, I think when I first got my card, I was trying to think what it was. But we didn't. At that time, I had never bought me a car, a truck, or nothing. was going town and wagon then. But anyway, we wait that time to go down to we stay down there just about 1 hour. It never would be over 10 or 12 of us meet on that Saturday evening. And then that's when we would get the card and tell, they have a little meeting, tell about our right and everything, hoping about our hope and everything. But that's in what I'm trying to think about, 38 or 30 or 42, somewhere along there. It's early back then. But anyway, that's the way it was. In those days, lived through it. But somehow, I just never was fearful. I don't know the reason why. A lot of my friends and everything were really scared. But I don't know why I wasn't fearful there. But anyway, I guess it's on the contents of my family. A large family, and they had these logging jobs and everything. And the plantation, the whole family picked cotton on plantation. And those people that own the land and everything, they had a lot of care for my family or something. Because we were workers, we were loggers and farmers.
People have respect for you?
Yeah, we could pick cotton now and mine, then big cotton planters, big plantation. There were 3 of us could pick well over 200 pounds a day, and they had a group here. It was a big family. The younger group here would be here on the farm. We carried the farm on here, but the older group, my age and little older, I think, let me see, 4 of us would go out picking cotton. We 4 could pick a bale a day. In a big plantation where all that cotton. And I guess by the big family, we had a pretty good time with land owners and storekeepers or whatnot. The white race, I said at that time. They had a lot of respect for us, and we had a lot of respect for them because we wanted a job. And then we got them jobs. Yeah. We didn't pay much.
So thank you so much.
Round
for talking with
9.
us.
Yeah, round 9.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.